Olivia Hart had built one of the fastest-growing technology companies in America before turning 35. Investors admired her intelligence, employees respected her discipline, and competitors feared her relentless determination. Yet behind the headlines and magazine covers was a woman who had stopped believing that people could genuinely care about her rather than her wealth. When her longtime assistant convinced her to accept a blind date arranged by mutual friends, she agreed only to stop the constant pressure. The meeting was scheduled at an elegant mountain resort after one of Olivia's business conferences. She arrived wearing a tailored red dress, expecting to meet another executive, attorney, or investor. Instead, she saw a tall man standing quietly near the fireplace, wearing a red flannel shirt, faded jeans, and worn leather boots. Beside him stood a smiling little boy holding a toy dinosaur. "You must be Olivia," the man said politely. "I'm Daniel Brooks." She forced a smile. "You brought your son?" Daniel nodded. "The babysitter canceled. The resort has a children's activity center, so Noah will be there while we have dinner." Noah waved politely. "Nice to meet you, Miss Hart." His manners impressed Olivia more than his father did. After Noah disappeared with a staff member, Daniel pulled out her chair before taking his own seat. The waiter poured water while silence filled the table. "So," Olivia asked, "what exactly do you do?" "I'm a carpenter." She blinked. "Only a carpenter?" Daniel smiled without taking offense. "I design and build custom homes, mostly for families." "I see." She had expected someone whose achievements matched hers. Instead, she found herself wondering how this date had ever been arranged. Throughout dinner, she spent more time checking emails than making conversation. Daniel didn't seem bothered. He asked about her company, charitable foundation, and favorite places to travel. His questions were thoughtful, but she answered with short, distracted replies. Finally, she asked, "Don't you ever wish you'd done something bigger?" Daniel looked out the window where snow gently covered the mountains. "I think raising my son into a good man is pretty big." She couldn't relate. "My schedule barely leaves room for weekends." "You should make time." "For vacations?" "For life." His calm answer irritated her. People constantly told her to slow down, yet none of them carried the responsibility of leading thousands of employees. "You make it sound simple." "It's not simple," Daniel replied quietly. "It's important." The conversation became awkward. When dinner ended, Olivia decided this would certainly be their last meeting. She thanked him politely as they stepped outside into the cold evening. Snowflakes drifted through the mountain air, while luxury SUVs lined the resort entrance. Then tires suddenly screeched across the icy road. A black SUV slid sideways, blocking the exit. Another vehicle stopped behind them. 4 masked men jumped out carrying rifles. Everyone froze. Guests screamed and rushed toward the hotel. Security guards reached for their radios, but one gunman fired into the air. "Nobody move!" The crowd instantly dropped to the ground. One attacker pointed directly at Olivia. "Take the CEO!" She felt her legs refuse to move. Daniel noticed immediately. Without raising his voice, he stepped slightly in front of her. "Stay behind me." She stared at him. "This isn't your fight." He never looked away from the approaching gunman. "It is now." The first attacker grabbed Olivia's arm. Before anyone realized what happened, Daniel exploded into motion. He trapped the man's wrist, twisted the weapon away, and struck him once across the jaw. The attacker collapsed unconscious into the snow. The second criminal rushed forward. Daniel pivoted, avoided the rifle, swept the man's legs, and disarmed him with smooth, practiced movements that lasted only seconds. The remaining kidnappers stopped. One stared in disbelief. "Who is this guy?" Daniel calmly positioned himself between Olivia and the rifles still pointed toward them. His breathing remained steady. His eyes never stopped scanning every movement. He wasn't panicking. He was calculating. Bullets suddenly cracked through the mountain air. Daniel grabbed Olivia's hand and pulled her behind a thick pine tree just before rounds shattered the stone walkway where she had been standing. She looked at him with complete disbelief. You're not a carpenter." "I am now," he answered calmly. He studied the surrounding terrain, noticing narrow trails leading into the forest, abandoned maintenance buildings farther uphill, and several blind spots the attackers hadn't secured. Every instinct he had spent years trying to forget returned in an instant. The kidnappers advanced through the falling snow. Daniel quietly whispered, "Stay close to me." For the first time since becoming one of the most powerful CEOs in the country, Olivia placed her trust not in money, influence, or security, but in the quiet single father she had underestimated only an hour earlier. Daniel led Olivia through the snow-covered forest, keeping low as gunfire echoed behind them. Every few seconds, he stopped, listened, and changed direction, making it impossible for the kidnappers to predict where they were heading. Olivia struggled to keep up, but she trusted him completely now. The man she had dismissed as just a carpenter moved with the confidence of someone who had survived impossible situations before. Ahead stood an abandoned ski patrol cabin. Daniel quietly pushed Olivia inside and secured the heavy wooden door with an iron bar. He quickly searched the room, finding an emergency radio, climbing rope, and an old flare launcher. "They'll find us," Olivia whispered. "Eventually," Daniel replied. "Our job is to make sure we're still standing when they do." Moments later, footsteps surrounded the cabin. One of the kidnappers shouted, "Come out! You're trapped!" Daniel remained calm. He handed Olivia the emergency radio. "If I tell you to run, don't look back. I'm not leaving you. You have hundreds of employees waiting for you. Your life matters. So does yours." For a brief second, they looked at each other in silence. The front window suddenly shattered as two kidnappers forced their way inside. Daniel reacted instantly, firing the flare launcher directly into the room. The bright flash temporarily blinded the attackers. Before they could recover, he disarmed one man and knocked the other unconscious with precise, controlled strikes. Outside, the remaining criminals opened fire, but the sound of approaching helicopter blades interrupted them. State police had finally traced Olivia's emergency security beacon. Realizing they were outnumbered, the kidnappers fled into the mountains, only to be intercepted minutes later by officers arriving from both sides of the valley. Within moments, every member of the kidnapping crew was arrested. As paramedics checked everyone for injuries, Olivia walked toward Daniel. His hands were scraped, his jacket was torn, and exhaustion showed on his face. But his first question wasn't about himself. "Can someone check on my son, Noah? He was at the resort." A staff member smiled. "He's safe. He never stopped saying his dad would come back." Minutes later, Noah ran across the snow and hugged Daniel tightly. Olivia watched the reunion with tears in her eyes. Wealth, power, and success had never impressed her as much as that single moment between father and son. A week later, she visited Daniel's workshop. Not to offer him money, but to thank him. She donated to the veterans charity he quietly supported and invited him to oversee the construction of affordable homes for military families through her foundation. Daniel accepted on one condition. "We do it to help people, not for headlines." Olivia smiled. Agreed. She had gone to the blind date expecting to judge an ordinary single dad. Instead, she met a humble hero whose courage, integrity, and love for his son reminded her that true greatness is never measured by status or wealth. It is revealed by the choices a person makes when someone else's life is in their hands.